Yeah, I'll try to be quick because I assume a lot of you already know what I'll be talking about, right? Except, especially that Zvonimir has already said quite a bit. So I'm Michael Gielda. I'm the chair of the content task group of RISC-V Foundation's marketing committee. And I'm basing this on slides from Rick O'Connor, who's the executive director. So hopefully I can do it half as good as him. Yeah, but if you're interested to learn more, of course, remember to visit risc-v.org. I'm also responsible for the content of that website, so if you have remarks, you can always tell me. I know it can be better. Don't worry, we're working on it. So, it's just 3 things I'm going to talk about today. It's an overview of the ISA very quickly, because obviously you guys know this. Then a bit about the foundation, as well as some of the new announcements, which I think is the most interesting part for you. Background, so one question first. Who here in this room hasn't ever heard about RISC-V? Great. Yeah, come on. Yeah, exactly. Nobody raised their hands, right? And when Rick asked this question 3 years ago, it was like full room of hands. Like 95% of people who listened to the first RISC-V talks didn't have a clue what it's all about. So this is getting simple, right? Nobody raised their hands because everyone knows RISC-V. Who of you has actually downloaded the RISC-V spec from GitHub? Okay, well, quite a few people, like 60%, I guess. And who has actually read the spec? Almost the same number. And who has implemented the spec, perhaps, in some way? Okay, quite a few people, too. So as you can see, it's really getting out there. There's like 20% of people in the room are actually actively working, implementing RISC-V stuff. This is great. So the origin is really that it was a short 3-month project meant to only kind of cater for students at the university, right? So people at Berkeley got together and they thought, okay, we're going to do some ISA teaching course, but what do we use? Do we use x86? Do we use ARM? Do we use MIPS? And of course, there was an agreement as to what should be used. There's pros and cons of everything. The biggest challenge of proprietary ISA was, well, they're kind of NDA and licensing issues there, and kind of what can you talk about, what can't you talk about? How do you talk about something that people then cannot implement? So eventually they figured out, okay, let's try to implement something of our own. And they only meant to actually do this for the course, right? We all know how it ended, right? So it's been a pretty awesome journey, but it all started with a student project, kind of like everything in this world, I guess. So yeah, 4 years later, they kind of decided, okay, this is pretty cool. Let's try to release it out there and actually get some broader use base for it. And so the reason why it's called RISC-V, a lot of people ask that, is just because there have been 4 previous RISC approaches at Berkeley. So there was RISC-1, RISC-2, then SOAR, and SPUR. And this is the 5th, so hence RISC-V. Don't read it RISC-V like the Intel people did at one of the conferences. You know, it's RISC-V. So yeah, it has a long story. It dates back to 1981. And actually, Dave Patterson, who's been very, very involved in developing all this, and actually he's the father of the name RISC, Reduced Instruction Set Computer, he recently received a Turing Award for his work with RISC, including the RISC-V stuff. He was greatly appreciated for the work, and rightfully so. And it was a big win both for open source, open systems, and RISC-V. So yeah, the foundation has been incorporated in 2015, initially with what was supposed to be 15 members, but then became like 45 very quickly, because when people heard there's a foundation they can join that does open source architecture, they got excited, and we had like 45 members immediately almost, right? So I'll tell you a bit how it developed later. So why instruction set architectures matter at all? You guys know this, right? They matter because they're the language that the computers speak. They're the interface for software engineers to build their stuff. And you can see that actually ISAs are not a very simple topic, because as much as any company would like to position themselves as leaders of any market, actually what happens is that Intel is, of course, dominant in some markets, but cannot for some reason get into the mobile market. ARM is kind of the other way around. They're kind of working a lot with mobile phones, but somehow the server market is kind of not really perhaps ready for this, and so on and so on. There's a lot of differentiation. There's a lot of different kind of niches that different companies have managed to dominate. But for some reason, there hasn't been a single kind of architecture that has been able to get everywhere. And that's what RISC-V is trying to change. So And we can see that there's a lot of good examples in different branches of engineering, right? So if you look at like networking and operating systems, databases, graphics, there's open standards that can be implemented both as open source implementations and proprietary implementations. And there's a lot of variation, but in the end, everything complies to a nice, good, well-known, well-tested standard. And voila, things work, right? Things are interoperable to a big extent, right? And in general, we've seen a lot of good stuff coming from standardization. So why not ISAs? Why not just computers in general? So, well, part of the problem is it's not so easy to do so, right? In a typical SOC, and Rick always uses this Tegra SOC as an example. I think it's a good example because it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of different blocks, which actually typically are based on different ISAs. Even internally, even within one company, there might be people kind of buying different parts from different places, and these parts might actually be speaking a different language, right, using a different ISA. Because these are all kind of designated to perform a specific task. So everyone also ends up building something of their own because they always think they can be better than everyone else. So it happens everywhere, right? It happened in Western Digital, it happened in most places. So actually even NVIDIA is a subject here also because they are part of the foundation and they do implement RISC-V for some of their stuff. So the question is, do we really need this differentiation? And does everything have to be proprietary? Does everything have to have different tools? What if we could just have one ISA that was free and open and everyone could use it? So yeah, that's how RISC-V came about. And the aims with the ISA have been kind of, I think, very close to the hearts of all the open source people. So it was supposed to be simple, it was supposed to be extendable, modular, compatible, and also support this problem of specialization. You know, if you want to have all those specific blocks for processing different things, you need some kind of ability to customize, ability to extend it. And so it's built into the standard that we can actually extend it for custom stuff. So we have a small base ISA that's just kind of pretty simple to understand and implement, but then quite a lot of extensions that allow you to do like things that you normally want to do with different kinds of computing units, as well as just the capability to introduce custom instructions if you need them for the really niche use cases. That's the overview. I mean, it's all out there. It's all, you can download it from GitHub, unlike different architectures out there. Basically, it's ranging from 32 to 128-bit. Of course, the 128-bit is very specialized, but the 32 and 64-bit stuff is, of course, very, very general purpose. We really don't need a lot of instructions to implement the base spec. And then if we want to do more, there's like multiple divide, atomic operations, floating point instructions, and complex instructions. So quite a lot of different extensions that cater for different use cases. And so, and also, even though there's a lot of those extensions, they still comply to a fairly standard RISC kind of encoding, and they'll fit in a fixed 32-bit instruction format. This is this so-called RISC-V green card. I removed the green background because I can never read it because of this green, so it's white in my presentation. It's a cheat, of course. We're using a very, very small font to fit it in, right? But it still fits. That's the cool thing. So basically, it's the entire ISA with all the extensions. And really, the base stuff is kind of on the left-hand side here. And of course, as you go to implement more complex stuff, you will use more and more of those instructions. But it's still kind of impressive to fit it all in here. Why RISC-V matters is also because of education. So you can actually teach this, and you can also build this. So you can take a student and tell them, look, if you can't understand all this, just go ahead and implement your core. It's open, you can go ahead and do it. You don't have to pay anyone, you don't have to license anything. And that's why all the textbooks have been converging to RISC-V recently. So we have all the classic books, the computer organization design and the computer architecture being kind of repurposed, rewritten for RISC-V. We have also a nice introduction from David Patterson and Andrew Waterman to RISC-V that is being sold at a reasonable price. That is kind of good to have as well. And so in general, we can see a big shift in academia where everyone starts to teach RISC-V because it's a no-brainer, right? If it's free, if it's open, the academia will definitely adopt it. This is my slide, actually. I think that's kind of quite important to add. RISC-V, of course, is about the cores, right, and about the CPUs. But in reality, RISC-V matters beyond CPUs. It's not just that, yay, all the CPUs will now be open source. That's cool, but as Zvonimir has also already mentioned, the uncore stuff is also very, very important. And so the foundation itself, of course, is focused around the ISA. It focuses around fostering the ISA, promoting the ISA, ratifying the ISA. Kind of from its articles of association, we can't really kind of go beyond that formally. But actually, a lot of the RISC-V members, including Western Digital, Antmicro, and many other companies, Google, people are actually involved in other open source efforts related to their RISC-V activities. So there's a lot of interconnection, there's a lot of kind of transfer of good stuff between the RISC-V ecosystem and, for example, this ecosystem and many other open source ecosystems. And RISC-V has played a key role in convincing the industry, hey, you can do open source in FPGAs, you can do open source in hardware design, ASIC design. Before it was kind of a little bit perceived as, these guys are just doing their stuff. In reality, we're going to buy a license from someone and implement our stuff proprietary. But now, when RISC-V is out there, suddenly people are realizing, okay, this is actually possible. So I think this is really key. And also, I think that there's so much momentum in the RISC-V ecosystem, there's so much happening that we can just kind of leverage on that and build on this. And we can also help other things improve and just release more open source things related to this entire big movement, entire big ecosystem of RISC-V. At least we're very, very excited about that, and we'd like kind of everyone here to also be, even if they're not building their own RISC-V core, you know. So I'll keep this part short. Many of you know this already. The RISC-V Foundation dates to 2015. It was incorporated, a lot of work to actually get the legal stuff right, you know. The important thing to remember is that, first of all, RISC-V is open and license-free and so on to everyone, right? So if you want to build stuff based on RISC-V, don't ever worry, it's going to be free and open. The trick only is with the trademark. If you want to use the trademark for a commercial product, you have to be a member. But that's kind of simple, right? In order to protect the ISA, if people actually want to sell stuff for money and they want to use the trademark, they'll have to comply to like suites that we're developing to ensure that, you know, their product is actually RISC-V and not something else. That's one thing. And second thing, they have to join the foundation. Otherwise, it's kind of very difficult to defend yourself, defend the ISA from various sorts of attacks and so on. So, but in general, if you're developing an academic implementation or you're just using it as a hobbyist and so on, you don't care about trademarks. You can basically do what you want. The important thing is only if you want to do something commercial that is a RISC-V chip and you want to use the trademark, you have to join. And if you're not convinced, well, there's quite a few people who were convinced. Actually, this is always not up to date. You can never keep it up to date. I think we now have like 150 plus members or something. The people above, that's the platinum members. Below, it's like the lower level members. And there's different great names here. Of course, Western Digital and, you know, Samsung and NXP and Google, NVIDIA, which also has been very open about their usage of RISC-V. Qualcomm is, a member. From the interesting kind of silver members, there's Tesla, So we're a cool bunch, and you can join us always. And remember, you can also join as an individual member, right? So you don't have to be a company. You can join as an individual member. You can also participate. So it doesn't have to be that you have to convince your organization, which might be difficult sometimes. You can join individually. The growth has been like incredible, and of course those bars are already probably outdated by now, but you get the idea, right? In terms of world adoption, it's been quite interesting. So we've seen incredible growth. Of course, the US has been kind of leading the charges in a sense, but we've seen incredible growth in China and India as well. And also we've seen, a lot of things happening in Europe. You can see that the RISC-V logo covers most of the European countries. If you see your country not being, there with the RISC-V logo, if that's not true, then tell us. Of course, we'll update this. If that is true, then do something about it, right? We have to put a flag there. So there's a lot of local events going on right now. We're kind of transitioning I think this is not a part of the presentation, but I'll tell you because it's important. So we're transitioning to a more, decentralized system of events. There will be, of course, global RISC-V events, but there's a lot of locality because, I mean, people can't travel just all around the world for all those workshops. So. Okay, point taken, point taken. I will tell Rick. It's not me doing, yeah. Okay, South Korea, great. A lot of this is kind of course, you can read it online, so I won't be very long here. The important thing to know is there is a board of directors. It's a properly set up foundation. So we have 3 committees, a technical committee, a marketing committee, and the new cool development is the security standing committee, which is kind of to show that RISC-V cares about security as a primary citizen, right? So we have a separate committee. It's not a subcommittee for the technical committee, it's a separate committee. And the chairs of those committees are listed here. My task group is part of the marketing committee. There's a lot of course, technical work going on, and the security stuff I'll mention as well in a sec. We have a great board of directors. Zvonimir is part of it, so remember he's kind of working on multiple levels, and but also all those great names with David Patterson, and there's Rob from NXP, there's Ted from Microsemi. We have NVIDIA represented. Sorry, you're not. Sorry.
I'm a treasurer.
So yeah, so we should add this, right? I have a few questions. No. Anyway, the point is we have a very good and competent board of directors that really cares about RISC-V, and they give a lot of thought as to why and how to do things. And if you think that something's happening too slow or something's not right, it's not necessarily because it's kind of these people don't know what they're doing or we don't know what we're doing in the committees. It's more like we're trying to really make sure that everything is kind of ratified as it should and everything goes according to a process. Then the most important part, the most interesting part. Some of the new stuff that's been happening, and I'm not able to list everything, but I kind of give you a few highlights. First of all, as always, more software. There's been a lot of work in Zephyr. We've been the guys maintaining RISC-V in Zephyr. The Sci-Fi people have also been contributing a lot, so there is pretty good Zephyr support right now, and it's going to get better. In terms of Linux, I guess you'll be very happy to know that we have mainline support, right? So 4.19, you can just download and run a 64-bit Linux on RISC-V. We're also, and Micro's also developing 32-bit support for Linux on RISC-V, and I'm sure we'll kind of have multiple contributions from other people too in that respect. There seem to be quite a bit of requests to actually get that done. There's improvements in LLVM, as always. GCC is also going forward, so we're hoping to really, by the RISC-V Summit, which I'll tell you about in a second, we're hoping to really be in good shape to tell people, hey, go ahead, just develop RISC-V because the software is there. There's new hardware. You've just probably had the opportunity to have this workshop with the GAPuno GAP8 from Greenwaves. That's really great. I encourage you to buy their board and do stuff with it. If you have a bit more cash, then you can also buy the Microsemi expansion board for the Hi5 Unleashed. That's a big monster, but actually it can, like, it's basically like a motherboard for a computer. Like you could probably put it in your, your ATX tower, right? And screw it in and pretend you have a RISC-V PC. Actually, it could do anything a PC could do. The Hi5 Unleashed is a quad, actually 5-core, pretty powerful board that can run Linux. Through this board, you can actually plug in a GPU. You can implement PCI Express stuff, so it's really very, very capable. And the other big development, I think, has been the security committee. Sorry, I put working group here. It's obviously security committee. And there's multiple security startups implementing security IP for RISC-V. And also, there is an effort ongoing to standardize a trusted execution environment style thing for RISC-V, which is also quite important in many areas. Another important announcement is the RISC-V Summit. You probably have already heard about it, but it's always good to confirm that, yes, it's happening on December the 3rd to December the 6th. There's keynotes from quite a few people, Western Digital again and Micro again. We also have Facebook presenting. That's also pretty cool. And Microchip actually being, of course, Microsemi and NXP and Sci-Fi. So Some of the regular names, some of the new names are here. We think we have a very good lineup. Perhaps not as good as ORConf this year, but still pretty good. So remember to register. It's kind of cheaper to register by October the 29th. Yeah, we encourage you to travel to the RISC-V Summit in California. There will be also a nice exhibition. You know, we also will be showcasing some new products. You can expect some new product announcements. I can't tell you who and from whom and how and why, but there will be some cool stuff. So please come. If you're kind of more based in Europe and you want to hear about something European, there's this Embedded Linux Conference Europe taking place in Edinburgh. It's a great event taking place October 22nd, 24th. And there's going to be a few talks about RISC-V. There's going to be a demo from us. The talks are about several different things, as you can see, both about the software ecosystem for RISC-V. There's updates on Linux, of course. It's a Linux conference. There's a very interesting thing happening with new Linux distros being ported. So we have a Mandriva talk, and Rick will be there giving this presentation. He'll probably do better than I, but still. Yeah, if you've heard this, then probably you don't need to go there. So yeah. Then there's one new big thing to announce today. So this is exclusive news. Nobody has heard it yet. Perhaps, you know, if they've been participating in planning this, then yes. But overall, the world hasn't heard about this. We're announcing a RISC-V soft CPU contest that's being sponsored by Google, Microsemi, a microchip company, and Antmicro. Basically, the contest is supposed to be the first design contest organized by RISC-V Foundation. The foundation wants to do more of those in the future, but we have to start somewhere. We think it's a very good idea to participate and really wanted to encourage you. We think a lot of you guys here sitting in this room could potentially do these kind of things. So what we want to do is to boost the FPGA ecosystem for RISC-V and encourage new creative implementations of soft cores, right? So of course, RISC-V is all about the chips and the ASICs, but it's also very good for doing FPGA things and soft cores specifically. So we wanted to invite people who might not traditionally be doing FPGA designs, but might be interested to start. So we wanted to invite those dreaded software guys to also try and do something here. We have several categories ranging from smallest implementation to highest performance implementation. And we'll give you details tomorrow, don't worry. So in the Q&A, don't ask me too many questions about the contest itself, because we'll do a separate kind of announcement of the contest specifically with several slides tomorrow, right? But I think it's going to be pretty exciting. And we're targeting 2 FPGAs from RISC-V Foundation members, obviously, right? And Microsemi and Lattice are both members of the foundation. So you should target one of their FPGAs. And there's actually cash prizes. It's not like a contest where you just get a handshake from Rick or something. No, there's cash, there's boards, there's excitement. So please kind of listen to tomorrow when we're going to announce the details for the contest. And please take part, of course. So yeah. So that's it for me. If you want to learn more, just follow us on Twitter and go to LinkedIn. Especially participate in mailing lists, of course. There's several of them. And in general, just take away the fact that it's both like a very strong commercially supported ISA, but it's also very pro-open source. It's not, of course, it is limited to RISC-V because the RISC-V Foundation is not the open something foundation, but a lot of the members are involved in open source initiatives. A lot of the stuff that's happening is helping open source go forward. So please remember to see whether you can use RISC-V in your projects. And even if you can't, it's still a great thing that pushes a lot of other things forward. So please support us, even if it's just kind of liking us on Twitter or just saying good stuff about RISC-V. Yeah, thank you very much. Now let's go to lunch.